should all die. Bomb that bitch. You. Kill you.
That's the sound of domestic terrorism. A voicemail left on a Texas abortion clinic's voicemail last month. Given the events today in Washington, D.C. and in Wichita, Kansas at Dr. George Tiller's church 2 Sundays ago, it is, of course, bone-chilling. Its aim is to intimidate the doctors and nurses and clinic workers and the people who are legally seeking medical services amid strident, sometimes lethal, sometimes merely ghoulish intimidation. Saturday, George Tiller was laid to rest. Yesterday, the Tiller family announced that the doctor's clinic in Wichita would close forever. And today, the president of the extreme anti-abortion group Operation Rescue said that his group wants to buy Dr. Tiller's clinic in Kansas and move their headquarters into it. Mr. Troy Newman told the Associated Press, quote, "I would love to make an offer on that abortion clinic, and that's some of the discussion that we're having." So, the official reaction of the super right-wing fringe to the assassination in its name, of its cause, is to make George Tiller's place of business a triumphant symbol for themselves, a symbol of their victory over the murdered doctor. On Saturday, the day George Tiller was buried, a man with ties to the radical anti-abortion group, the Army of God, threatened a volunteer escort at an abortion clinic in Allentown, Pennsylvania. This according to a worker at the clinic. If you aren't already familiar with the Army of God, on their website right now, there's a picture of Dr. George Tiller just moments after he was murdered under the headline, "The lives of innocent babies scheduled to be murdered by George Tiller are spared by the action of American hero Scott Roeder. George Tiller, the baby killer, reaped what he sowed and is now in eternal hell." You can then scroll through the Prisoners of Christ portion of their website and see mugshots and descriptions of murders and attempted murders and bombings, all celebrating the perpetrators. The person accused of threatening the clinic in Allentown, Pennsylvania on Saturday has a prominent link on this website to his anti-abortion prisoner newsletter. His website says, quote, "Because I believe we should use every legitimate means, including force, in our attempt to protect those being tortured to death, I want to hear from people who have been forceful." And it is the same man who on Saturday allegedly walked up to a volunteer at the clinic in Allentown and said, "How do you prefer to die? By knife or by bullet?" Joining us now is Jennifer Boulanger. She's executive director for the Allentown Women's Center and a member of the Abortion Care Network, a group of independent abortion clinics across the country. Ms. Boulanger, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Was what I just described there an accurate description of what happened at your clinic last week?
Frighteningly, yes. Yes, and Mr. Dunkel pickets my home, the home of our physician, and also the home of several doctors in Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
Have you noticed a change recently in the amount and the character of protests and threats that you've received in Allentown?
Absolutely. We've had malicious calls, not a bomb threat, but calls similar to the one you played in Texas. We've been targeted by a number of malicious calling events. We've been targeted since the beginning of the year. I think abortion providers across the country have been targeted since Obama was inaugurated, but now since Dr. Tiller has been murdered, it's just, they feel even more empowered, and we're seeing an anger that we've never seen before.
That's what we're trying to document here, because we've been hearing this over and over again, that the Tiller murder was part of what has been a spike in the last few months in threats, harassment, violence, and the character of protests against abortion providers. Now, as you mentioned, we spoke with other members of the Abortion Care Network, of which your clinic is a part today. We heard more stories of intimidation. Outside of a clinic in North Dakota today, a man reportedly held a "Tiller deserved it" sign and told other protesters that they should promote assassinations. In Texas, as you said, that bomb threat voicemail that we played earlier was part of a chain of suspicious activities. One protester got inside the clinic and threatened a patient. A broken security camera was accompanied by this unsettling fact that one of the protesters somehow knew that their surveillance camera had been disabled. Is it your experience that the Tiller reference is essentially becoming sort of a touchstone for people, that it's becoming a way that people indicate that they're in favor of violence?
Absolutely. I mean, he's always been a target, but we've always been experiencing violence, and it's been a slow increase. It's like a slow boiling pot. You know, we've been simmering for a while, and you get desensitized. You don't realize the level of terrorism you're experiencing. And it shouldn't take a doctor being murdered for law enforcement to take this seriously. We need more prevention efforts. We need buffer zones. We need the feds to educate local law enforcement on FACE, and we need FACE prosecutions. Without strict enforcement of existing laws, it's just going to escalate.
This is another thing that we've been hearing repeatedly, that the reason that FACE was put into effect, the reason that FACE was passed, a federal law about clinic violence and clinic intimidation and criminal damage and all these things, the reason the federal law was passed is because of worries that local law enforcement didn't take these things seriously. But what you're suggesting is that it's part of the federal responsibility to make sure that local police do respond when things happen at clinics.
Absolutely. That's the only way you can prevent the escalation of terroristic activity.
Your organization hosted a memorial for Dr. Tiller on Sunday, I know. Were you at all concerned about safety at that event?
Well, I was concerned, very much concerned. We felt very vulnerable after the threat on Saturday, and even, federal marshals were telling me not to go. But I can't hide. I'm not the one that's supposed to be hiding. They're supposed to be preventing the terrorists. I shouldn't be told to hide in my home and not come out and not speak out for myself. It's really, they need to go after the terrorists.
Every crime committed by the organized militant wing of the anti-abortion movement is a failure of law enforcement. And every time that somebody is prevented from having a legal job like you do, or pursuing legal medical services like the women do who use your clinic, is a failure of law enforcement. Is there anything specifically that you would like to see changed in terms of the ways that laws are enforced around this issue? You mentioned buffer zones.
Yeah, buffer zones, just safety zones around the entrances of clinics so that people aren't touched. Our patients, our employees, our volunteers get touched all the time. And this is an issue that shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have to worry about the safety of our patients as they enter the clinic. That is a very minimum, at the very minimum, what we need. We also just need strict enforcement of laws. We need prevention efforts. We need local law enforcement to work with federal marshals and the Department of Justice to prevent this. We need Obama's help. It's gotten way out of control. I shouldn't be told by local law enforcement that this is to be expected because of my chosen profession, which is what I have been told.
Wow. Jennifer Boulanger, Executive Director for the Allentown Women's Center, a member of the Abortion Care Network. Thanks for helping us get the word out about this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just hope women tell their stories because they need to support the clinics too.
Thanks, Jennifer.